any second. Stand it from yet. No.
Okay. Well, good evening, councillors, and welcome to another Leisure Services Committee meeting of Woodley Town Council. The council meetings are now recorded, and with the recording streamed live and stored on the Town Council's YouTube site. By virtue of those attending the meeting, you do consent to having your image and audio recorded for that purpose. Of course, if you do not wish to do so, for your image and audio being recorded, please do not stay for this meeting. And for those in attendance, we're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if you hear the fire alarm, please head to the nearest fire exit concrete at the fire assembly point by the open centre at the front of Woodford Park. So with no further ado, I shall go to item 1, which is for apologies. Do we have any apologies?
We have apologies. We have apologies from councillors Heath and councillor Bragg.
Okay, thank you very much. On to item 2, which is the declarations of interest. January. None? Okay, thank you very much. Then I shall move on to item 3, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of November. The item here is to approve the minutes of that meeting held on the 15th of November 2022 and for the chairman to sign them. Do bear in mind, of course, that those minutes were provided at the full council agenda on the 6th of December. All those those that approve, please raise their hand. All those against? All those abstaining? Those minutes are approved. Take item 4 on the agenda, which is to note the budget report on page 3.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of things, key things to note. So on page 3 under expenditure, you'll see there are a couple of items there that are over the month 9, 75%. The ones to note there, grounds maintenance at 84%, which was fuel and PPE costs, and some of that is bought earlier in the year, obviously for the rest of the year, so that won't be over at year end. Likewise at Woodford Park, that was due to horticultural supplies and grass seed, etc., that's bought in advance in the year. In terms of income, likewise everything is the right way round, and so much as income is over the 75% overall. A couple of items to note that may look a bit out of kilter there. Woodford Park at 236%. That's to do with memorial seats, which have been really popular in this year. We've had quite a lot of requests for those, which we've been providing. And the hall's income has been very strong following the pandemic. We've had lots of bookings for social functions there. If there's any questions.
Any questions from councillors? At this point, we have a long list of questions from Councillor Heath. Yeah, Alison.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the allotments expenditure only being at 45%. Should we just overestimate what we need to spend, or is there a lot of work that we still haven't done?
It's a difficult one because it does vary so much. It's largely responsive. So depending on things that happen up there, we have got some work going on there at the moment in terms of a water leak and things like that. So there will be more expense in the year. So we have to allow a bit for unexpected things. There's less scheduled maintenance up there from the maintenance team.
There were a lot of skips last year, wasn't there?
We have skips in the year anyway, which we do at the Maybank holiday, and that's a regular. A regular expense, so that is in there, but that's every year.
So everything that allotment holders should expect for the fee they're paying, they are getting, and everything
yes,
you promised to do.
Yes, there was some work in there to do with locks and replacement locks and things as well. So there's nothing waiting to be done.
Yeah, could I just ask briefly about the allotments, the water problem, water leak, is that been sorted and how much is that cost?
It's been looked at. We don't know yet. We've isolated the supply to that area and maintenance team investigating it, trying to find out where it is.
Okay, then in that case, I'll note item 4 and move on to item 5, which is River Park Services, Sports and Development Activities Report on page 5.
Yes. Evening, everybody. So as I did in the last committee meeting in November, I've supplied the same two charts again. The top one being the reasons for gym member cancellation. Now, the period I monitored this from was the 1st November to the 31st of December. It's relatively similar to the previous periods. As you can see, the biggest reason was none given. We particularly struggled to get answers from people across the Christmas period, the week before and the week in between. People just didn't answer their phones basically and didn't reply to the emails. Other than that, not using membership again was the higher reason that people gave. That again was similar from the previous period. The only real one there to pick up on is the move to another gym. If you remember at the last meeting, I mentioned that 2 members had left because they pursued a family membership at another gym. Same reason again, that those 2 people are a couple that left and have pursued a family membership because their son can join with them. I have had a little bit of a look into it, but not as much as I wanted to. What I do know is that at Loddon Valley, they used to have a set time that under 16s could go in. So they were restricted, I think, between 4 and 6, and they had to be out by 6. I believe they're changing that though, so I'm kind of waiting to see what they do first. And then I'm going to have a proper look into it in February with a view to see if we can do something similar. But yeah, at the moment, I'm not too sure what we're going to do. The second graph there is membership income. Hasn't changed much since the last one because we've only had a couple of months. Even though it doesn't show December 22 on there, it is actually on there. It's the very last little dip, which is very similar to the trends we had in 2017, 18 and 19, where membership income drops a little bit in November and December, and then hopefully obviously rebounds in January, February and March. Moving on, the defibrillator was finally installed right at the start of December. Thankfully, it hasn't been used, but it looks very professional. We've let our clubs know it's available, and it's been pretty well received, as you'd expect. It shouldn't really need much maintenance either. We check it once a week just to make sure it's okay. Yeah, it's got a little heater inside it to keep the unit at a sensible temperature, which is nice. And yeah, it's a pretty good unit actually. Christmas activity. So traditionally, everything quietens down over Christmas for us. Less people come out to do things, and especially less people come out to exercise. So we try to put a bit of a theme on our class timetable and run some parties and things like that to keep people coming during that quiet period. Some of the sessions we run on there, we did Santa circuits and a festive boot camp. They were well received by the regular attendees in particular. Didn't particularly attract anybody new, but it did keep people coming along, which was nice. And as I mentioned there, we ran a Christmas party for our Silver Circuits members, and we every year we do mince pies for our 2 afternoon clubs. The family racket attack. Now this is something that originally we just started as a way to kind of fill space, but has actually become very popular during the school holidays. So in short, any family with somebody who's 18 years old or younger can play badminton, table tennis or tennis for £1 each per hour. So we had 351 people use that promotion over the Christmas period, and actually works out to only really be about a week. So it does fill the centre when otherwise bookings are not kind of there. A lot of our regular term time hirers, as term time we suggest, don't hire during the school holidays. So this has been a nice way to keep the centre busy. Well, yeah, it's just worked out really well, and it is well received by people. We've now got regular people coming back every day during the school holidays to just play table tennis with a child or whatever, which is nice. The Feel Good membership. So for January, we tend to use a promotion to try and keep get people into the gym. We relaunched the Feel Good membership because it did so well for us last year. It's done well again this year. So as of today, we've had 49 people sign up for the gym in January, so 17 days, which is more than we'd expected. And obviously, there's still a little bit to go on that promotion, so I'm pleased with how that's gone. links to that, in January, we themed our exercise class timetable around superheroes, but we just tried to think of something that would be a bit unique and a bit kind of interesting to people. And we've used the timetable to promote the membership quite heavily because it's one of our biggest selling points, and it's one of the reasons that people tend to sign up for membership. So yeah, we kind of, you might see that if you do follow our Facebook page, kind of regularly being put out on there. And lastly, there was a fundraising event run by one of our regular instructors earlier in January to help raise funds for Against Breast Cancer. That event went really, really well. She managed to get 50 people booked on, which was the capacity, and then she had people turn up that wanted to join in as well. We provided the hall free of charge for her, and then in return she handed out some of our flyers and promoted our classes and things like that. But all in all, a really good event, so that was nice as well. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Alison.
Yeah, have you thought about the impact of the newly opened Palmer Park swimming pool leisure centre? Whether we'll see people from Woodley attracted in there?
I have in the same way I kind of thought about Bullmerch when it was launched. It's a nice facility, and it depends what you're looking for. I was very aware when Bullmerch was, but we'd never be able to compete with people that wanted to do swimming. And we did have, especially early on, people leave because they wanted to take up a swimming membership or go swimming. But ultimately, I think we're kind of a different centre to that. We've got a bit more of a community feel about us at the moment. I always tell people that our average age is northwards of 35 for our members, which kind of might give you a bit of a feel for kind of who comes. And we're as busy in the morning as we are in the evening, which is quite unusual. So I'm not particularly worried, but if I start to see a trend of people leaving because they're heading there, then I might start to think about it a bit more.
On that,
You know, I think the free parking is definitely something that we've got.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because I think the borough are definitely looking to charge at Bullmerch
Oh really?
in the future. Because the free offer they give at Carnival Hub is just limited. It's not really, it was never intended to be forever. And I certainly think that could have an effect on people looking at our gym again over the gym at Bullmerch.
Well, the Bullmerch car park's
And you
always
do have to pass
busy.
pay at Carnival Park. Oh, really?
We have to pay, yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
No, well, I think they brought it in the last sort of like 4 years, 5 years, I think.
People probably getting the bus and going into town.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that though, sorry to interrupt, can Woodley residents use Palmer Park? Because when I used to live the other side of the bridge,
It's a really good rate for Reading Borough residents.
that's right, it's a different rate. They used to do the passport for leisure.
Yeah, it's Reading Park, it's called.
Reading Parks. Oh,
Yeah.
because you couldn't use it if you were working in Borough in the old days. I didn't know if that
You
changed.
can still use the gym, but you don't get that
You don't get
reduced
the
rate,
pass.
no.
Okay.
In the same way that I think we have.
Yeah, so
reduced rate for Woodley residents.
yeah, we do. Yeah, so most of our activities have reduced rates for them for new residents, and they have the option to get the Healthy Habits membership out, which allows them to then get discount on badminton courts and other things as well.
Look for me. You're in full flow now. No. Sorry.
Shall I decide? Catherine.
It's in fact a question from Alex, because I know you're waiting for that. And he's saying we're about £4,000 a month down from early 2020. Is that due to Bullmerch Centre?
Specifically for the gym or the centre? We found out now.
You didn't specify that. I think the leisure centre.
Leisure centre as a whole, I'd have to have a deeper look into it to answer. I can give out to an email afterwards.
Very much. Councillor.
Parking issue, could the borough, what kind of role does the borough have in terms of parking charges for Woodford? So
We own all of this.
but they can't suggest or anything like that, just.
That's a good question, actually. So the parking that's up at the Woodford Park Centre, that is controlled by Woodley Town Council. It's not quite different.
It's our line.
Yeah.
So in that case, yeah, those increases by on it, unless of course this town council decides to do something else, but so plans for that. Yeah.
Is it ever possible for Woodley Town Council to kind of like,
I wouldn't say I mean, it's always possible,
is it?
but it's so unlikely.
I don't.
Borough can't put their ticket machine on land.
No, not borough, but is it ever a thing that my concern is that we would lose that very useful service for the free parking for those that use the bowling and the leisure centre.
And the play parks. and-
Yeah, of course.
I think that would be our concern, to be honest with you,
Right,
as
okay,
well,
good.
and we wouldn't want to, levy unnecessary charges where there have never been, and discourage people using our facilities at Woodford Park. That's how it is, and if ever there was a suggestion, I would oppose it.
Thank you.
I think the only time you found people using that car park to walk to the shops. And now that the coalition at the borough want to increase the rate to charge Sundays and in the evenings, I think that's something that we sort of
I
need to keep
park-
an eye on.
I park there with
You know, if someone,
Do you?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
my cars are too heavy to use any of the car parks. My car's over 3 tons, I can't use any of the car parks.
Yeah,
What's
that's
registration?
Where's that lock wheel?
going on a big walk all around park and back to the car, or if they're just going to walk straight over to the shops, you can't really tell. But I mean, we don't want the car park to be full of shoppers.
You get such a
so
mix
that,
of
if
people.
if you to the gym, then
I think that's quite unlikely, given if you do have a load of shopping on you, you're not.
At least they're having a workout. I can carry
Yeah.
on backwards and forwards.
I think it's just something for us to
Yeah.
be aware of.
Monitor on, maybe, yeah.
It's never been flagged up.
Because we had that problem at Coronation Hall, don't we? That we now had to put the.
Yeah, it's always been an issue, and that because it was so close to the town
Yeah.
centre, that's always been a problem. There's also a bit of an issue with, even though we were trying to protect hires would do it as well, so they'd come for booking, and then they'd go and do a bit of shopping afterwards.
Mm, yeah.
It's kind of a bit of a vicious circle. What I would say there, what's worked, and we've tried it before and not had much success, but this time round, we went a bit all out on getting the message across and explaining the reasons behind it, rather than just stopping people parking. And what we found was, particularly through the social media comments we were getting, actually people were really supportive of us trying to help hirers,
Hmm.
be able to use the facility properly that they were paying for, and that was there was more of that than there was complaints about not being able to park there, which was
I think the impact of doubling the charges, the charging for weekend, it's also on the people who work at the shops, that, so that if you're going to try and find somewhere you can afford to park, it's not going to take a lot of the earnings you're making, because we know that on residential roads around there, they say, well, I see the lady from Lloyd's particularly at the bank in a uniform park outside my house every day, and more and more yellow lines have been put in to stop that, which just pushes it out. So I just think we just need somehow keep. I mean, I think it's going to be quite obvious if people in shop uniforms striding off across the park.
I don't often see people wandering back into the car park with shopping bags or things.
The changes, the car park changes haven't come yet. So
I'll
when
keep an eye.
I mean, we've got every sympathy for people, from a small wage, and everyone has to pay it out on a lot of money on your parking. But on the other hand, we need people, families coming to use our facility.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have a parking problem. We're not turning people away, so to speak, from the car park. They're using the sense we've got plenty of spaces. So yeah, if it becomes a problem, I think maybe we do something about it. But for now, it's
Good. Anybody else have any other questions before I move on to the next agenda item? Okay, number
Just say to Ed, you often talked about feel good and special things at Christmas. I just wondered, were the staff able to do something at Christmas? Because I know so many people work shifts on a part-time.
what do you mean? I have time off or yeah. So we
It's really important.
Oh, yeah. So as a team, we kind of balance our annual leave across the year. So everybody kind of takes different times off. We've got a lot of people that have children, a lot of people that don't have children, or younger staff, a lot of older staff. So we've got a nice mix. And most of the time, our regular full-time, part-time staff get a good chunk of time over Christmas. And we closed this year for 6 days, I think it was. And everybody gets those days off. And then our uni students come back and they tend to pick up those shifts because they're looking for the work when they're not at uni. So it works quite well. So yeah, everyone gets a nice break unless they choose not to.
Oh, you didn't have like one night, like we're shut because we're having a huge party for.
No, do you know what we didn't this year? No. I'll bear that in mind next.
Very much.
Yeah. No, we didn't actually this year, no, but yeah, we were planning to last year. I think last year there was a big concern about COVID, if I remember rightly again. So I think it ended up being cancelled. Usually the younger guys would go bowling or something, but yeah, they did this year.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to item 6 then, which is parks and buildings.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to note, electrical works at Victoria Park Leisure Centre are complete, and we are now looking at some potential projects for this year and for years going forward. Ed's already identified a few of those, which is really good. So we're working through those with the amenities manager. A few items of work there in Woodford Park itself. Bowles Green irrigation system, that is underway, and the amenities team are doing that in-house. Knee rail fencing likewise will be starting from next month and will be done in sections through the year. The materials for that were delivered yesterday actually, so that's well in hand. And the team undertook some training, some powered access training, so cherry pick training, so that we can carry out certain works in-house, cleaning the guttering around the sports hall and things like that, which haven't been done for some time. And will save us some money in the longer term. They've also been able to replace some of the lighting bulkheads on the overflow car park area. Sorry, not the overflow car park, the main car park area, the top, which hadn't been done when we replaced all the other lighting. The pathways, another project that funding was approved in the year, that will be starting very soon up at Malone Park and around the lake, which is a bonded gravel type pathways to improve access, particularly to the play area at Malone Park, so you don't have to trudge across the grass. Chapel and Coronation Halls, there's a bit of work completed there for the fire alarms, which was monies funded from the Buildings and Facilities Fund in the year. And allotments water leak that was mentioned earlier on, we are looking into. We do still have a waiting list, around about 60 tenants. This time of year, it fluctuates quite a bit as the builds go out, people give up plots and new people take them on. Had a really positive meeting with the tenants committee this week with the amenities manager to go through some projects and potential things at the site, and we will be attending their AGM in March to show some support and kind of keep that link between the council and the tenants committee going.
Good, okay, thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor.
Yes, another one from Alex about Chapel Hall and Coronation Hall. Are these new fire alarms to replace old ones?
There was a system in there of sorts that was essentially a kind of off-the-shelf one that wasn't really up to much. As a historic project from quite a few years ago. So what we've actually put in is something that's fit for purpose. We'd identified it as a risk, so it wasn't that it was dangerous particularly. It's just when we reviewed the risk assessment, we thought it was wise to have a better system in there on balance. So that was good.
Thank you. Lighting, there's particularly Woodford Park. Kevin, I've been banging on to you for ages about lighting in the park, as you know, much to some amusement amongst us both. But a constituent approached me at home last week, and he'd been around the lake, the bit by Farrier's Close particularly, that backs onto the lake there, and he said it was incredibly dark. He walks his dog twice a day, and he said it was really dark around there, and as a 50-something robust gentleman, he felt quite threatened by the nature of it. And this evening I've walked through the park, and there's dozens of people out there walking their dogs or just for socially leisure purposes. Can we please formally look at a plan, whether we need to look at a plan as well for lighting around the park, because of the number of people that do use it for recreational purposes and as a thoroughfare? Can I formally ask that we look at that, please, and come up with a plan?
I think if the committee's minded, then I can certainly add that to the project schedule that goes to strategy and resources, and we can look at that as a project to cost that
Councillor.
and see what's possible.
I'm kind of in two minds about it. I really do support, the more light, the better. It's safe for a lot of people, in particular, women going for a walk. It's a big campaign. It's gone on for decades, I think, to light up our streets. But at the same time, given the wildlife we've got there, can we make sure that we have a look at the impact on wildlife, like pollution?
Yeah, I think it'd have to be sensitive to the space. The other side of that is also you have to be quite careful about not wanting to light somewhere that then draws people in terms of antisocial behaviour and things like that to certain areas. So it's a bit of a bit of a balance. So,
Is that what happens when you light up some? I would have thought the opposite would have
well,
been.
no, it can do because
What's
actually,
lights around dark places?
yeah, well, people quite like somewhere that there is a light to congregate as well. So
Especially if it's out of the way.
yeah,
If it's,
So it just needs a bit of thought.
if no one else can see it.
Out of sight, but lit.
Yeah, that's it, perfect.
Out of
Yeah.
sight, floodlit, okay.
Yeah,
yes.
but yes, we need to look at that and also timings for when it's lit, etc. So
Oh, yeah.
Might it be? It's better than maybe, I mean, it's probably was something you'll think about when you look at a lighting plan. But
yeah, because it would need to be mapped out if you are going to light it. It needs to be appropriate distances. So that it is effective.
absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, we need to look at that as part of it.
The environmental impact as well.
Yeah.
as the
So
social.
I can add that to the project list.
Are we all happy to add that to the project list?
Yes.
Real, if we could actually invest, yeah, look at it, yeah, super.
Councillors, well,
Sorry, I did raise with Kevin this week about improving the state of some of the pathways around the football pitch. Residents in the roads off Ravensbourne, who access that there to come through, said, they're frequently incredibly muddy and pretty impassable, really. And as we saw before, we do like encourage people to walk to the shops. So if we could look at improving. I'm not talking about making it a solid path or anything, but just making it so that it a bit of rain, it doesn't make it impassable.
Yeah, it has come up a couple of times before. I know David Provan has spoken to me about it as well. What we were looking at was whether something along the lines of the bonded gravel or something like that, possibly something a little more basic than that, even that just isn't flooded, so you're not walking on grass. And it could possibly be phased as well if we didn't want to do the whole project in one go. So it's a big job. It's a fair old area going around there. But you're right, a lot of people do use it, particularly for dog walking. So
We could just fill in some of the
potholes.
well, they're not really potholes, are they? But I mean, some of that, the pathways really just look like they were created because that's where everybody walked, rather than
It's,
anything ever made. Yeah.
It's on the park run route as well, so it does get a lot of feet across it, across the top and down that side, backing onto Haddon. Yeah, so it does get a lot of wear. Yeah.
Any other questions? I'll move on to the next agenda. Let's move to item 7 then, which are charges for 23-24. That's on page.
thank you very much. So most of that, if you find your budget appendix, which is the separate document. Excuse me. So the first few pages in there related with the Park Leisure Centre and sports activities up there. Ed, do you want to just run through your rationale for those, and then I'll talk about the halls?
Yeah, sure. So to be honest, across the board, I haven't gone for anything particularly scary. It's relatively standard price increases. In terms of the first page, which is the room hire, which relates to the function room, the actual interior room, which become the function room, and then the rooms upstairs, we have mainly across the board, everything 5% or less, nothing significant there, 50p here and there. Moving on to the sports hall, which is probably more where the public impacted by price increases. It's the first time I've suggested increasing the cost of our peak badminton for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. £10 and up to £10.50 and then £12.50 up to £13. Part Part of that was to do with my price comparisons with other sites, which are all significant, not significantly higher, but higher than our prices that we currently charge. Similarly, I've slightly raised the under 18 prices, and then the club rate, which is what the rate that our evening peak time clubs would pay, is also 50p up. Similarly, netball, a small price increase. I was a bit hesitant actually with netball because it is significantly higher than Loddon and Wokingham. I struggled to find a price for ball merch for netball. I would suggest it'd be relatively similar, if not the same, as the Wokingham Leisure Centre. But this year in particular, getting prices for those things was incredibly difficult. They were very reluctant to give me them at any of the centres I went to, if I'm honest. Table tennis, again, 50p on each of those charges there, and Healthy Habits staying the same, which would be the same for a while. Outdoor sports facilities, bowls, the price increase looks incredibly significant, but is actually only 50p on each line there. The reason that I've increased it by 50p is following a conversation with the groundsman that looks after bowls. It said that the cost of materials is going up significantly, so that makes no sense. To be honest, those charges are for the public that come along, not the members of the club. I think last year we had the button pressed 3 times on the till across the entire 12 months, so it won't really impact anybody, but even so. Cricket, I haven't increased the prices of the artificial wicket in full day and the evening grass because they're not used, so there was no reason to increase them particularly. The ones that are used, which is the grass full day, which is the price that the weekend teams will pay on Saturday and Sundays play, we'll put up by £5. And in the evening, where we do occasionally hire out the artificial wicket, I've also increased that by £5, with the community rate then going up by £1. Grass football, I've kept the same. As you can probably tell, in line with the fact that Sports Park, who do run the pitches over at the Bullmarsh Pavilion, have their prices lower than ours, and we're not oversubscribed for grass football, so increasing the price didn't seem like a good idea there. Outdoor netball, £1 each per line, and then tennis, 50p on each line there as well. So as you can see, nothing particularly scary or incredibly increased, but across the board, I've gone for small increases.
Sports park.
The sports park is Reading University's sports facilities. It's kind of what they call their gym, everything that's involved with sport at the uni. But they run, but they run the Bullmarsh Pavilion football pitches and grass pitches over there. So I'm not quite sure how they do that, but I'm pretty sure a groundsman goes over and does all the work there, and then obviously goes off and comes and unlocks it and locks it back up again.
I mean, the comment you made about not finding out about Bullmarsh for the netball.
Yeah.
I believe that people, the leisure company, have to charge the same everywhere, whether it's at Loddon Valley or Carnival or here.
I had a couple of conversations.
Something about swimming, but they're supposed to be the same everywhere. They can't, give better preference to people in Early and Wokingham than what they're providing with it.
I know that's the case for Badminton because that's what the 3 receptionists at each site told me. The only thing I'm not sure about with netball is I don't know whether it's a slightly different size facility. So I'm not sure whether or not that's when they charge different, because netball courts can be in Loddon, I think it's 8 courts, they've got a bigger space. And I don't know whether the netball court's in the middle and they charge more for it. But I just couldn't get the information out of any of the receptionists for it. The only one that I got was the one at Wokingham, I believe.
You really have to say how much they have.
I couldn't get through to most of the sites, and even when I did, they wouldn't give me. Told me to email and to get a bookings officer, which I then did, and they didn't get a reply.
Councillor Jewell.
Yes, these are my questions, not Alex's. I was looking at anything that was up towards the 10%.
Yeah, sure.
You explained the bowls one, but the other 2 are OAPs and under 18s. That's gone up 10%, and so has the OAPs and under 18s for tennis. Just really to point out that those, it's gone up higher for them, who are the people are more likely not to be able to afford that increase. And I wondered if it was a matter of rounding up or there's a reason.
Yeah, so across table tennis and tennis, I went for 50p on each of the lines to keep it consistent. So when I'm doing these price increases, I tend to consider the price, not the percentage. And then the percentage obviously is usually what I talk about in the meeting. I like to keep it consistent where I can. It's also helpful on the till with the guys that actually take the money, because it's easier to work out the change. So that's partly what I'm thinking when I'm doing these. I don't have any concerns about it, but of course.
I understand consistency, but there ought to be consistency in the percentages as well. And I think those just really do stick out. And any other group of people, it probably wouldn't be so bad, but it's the OAP and under 18s, I would prefer to see that increase being less than 10%. Interesting to see what other people think.
I understand your point about the percentage, but I think, as Ed said, it's a matter of 50p or nothing. And I assume we can't, we need to make some increase. If we, I mean, or if we make no increase this year, then next time we put £1 on, which would be 20%, which would certainly not, I would not want to do that.
What's the impact in terms of, those two particular services in terms of usage and revenue? Are they sort of like still small? So they not used that often, in which case a price increase has little or no impact.
So we have for tennis, just to start with tennis, there won't be any particular impact from that. Tennis is only really popular with us across Wimbledon, and that's assuming the weather's okay. I wouldn't know how many times we hire a court at either of those rates, but that's the hourly price. So if, for example, you had, and well, can I just point out as well, that's the off-peak price too. So if somebody was to play tennis at, in the middle of the week on a Tuesday or whatever, the group of people playing tennis would pay the £6 or the £5. So just over £1 each if there's 4 people playing, or split between the 2 people, I'm assuming. Table tennis week is a little bit more popular than tennis, considering we've played all year round. Very, very rarely do we have adult table tennis, if I'm honest. It tends to be OAP table tennis. The price increase of 50p per hour, you won't see a difference financially, and you won't get any issues from people querying that. But it would be more significant than the tennis for sure.
So didn't do any price change on the tennis. It's not really impact. On the table tennis, it's likely to be a little bit more.
Yeah, you'd see a small increase in the table tennis income for the year, but nothing to.
And what's the table tennis again? Is it going from?
Specifically for the under 18 OAP rate, if you don't have a Woodley resident pass, I'm suggesting it goes to £6 from £5.50, so a 50p increase. If you do have a pass, I'm suggesting it goes to £5.50 from £5, again, it's a 50p increase.
And you pay per
table, that's the per table rate. So if a group of 4 people.
It's double. We're getting double the money we get. So only 2 people turn up to play.
Bear in mind, it's at least 2 people that need to hire the table, otherwise it's a pretty boring game. So
Run very fast.
So if you were paying the OAP non-pass rate of £6, £3 each to pay, I'm suggesting.
Can we vote on it and have 2 options?
I think we should have, I mean, personally, I would propose no increase in OAP, but everything else was increase as well. Because it's not going to make that much difference in the revenue. And actually,
But the actual figures, I'm like, how much would we, how many people?
I don't have them on, but I can find them.
What the actual amount of pounds per year impact on our budget is all this. We're not.
I can find out. I mean,
Or just usage as well. I mean, if there are people sort of not paying that, or if they've communicated that that's too much of an increase, have you had anything?
these prices don't go to the public until they're
Through,
So what was the impact when we went up from £4.70 to £5? Was that?
Is that for table tennis? Sorry.
Table tennis. Looking at
So when we're,
it's 470 in 2021, £5 in 22, and we're putting it to 550. So that 30p increase was 8%. don't check my maths. But did
You
you
said that so confidently, Alison.
is that happening?
If you mean impact by, did anyone query it or complain about it? No, no, we haven't had a query. The only one that people will probably query and complain about is badminton, because that's our most popular in-demand activity that is, used every single day, and it'll just be a comment that it's gone up in price, but that's relatively.
And that didn't increase.
That's the first time that peak rate badminton has increased, I think, since COVID. I think pre-COVID was the last time I rose that.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only thing I can think of that people might complain about is if you were an adult and you suddenly realised you had to pay 50p more, why hasn't the OAP one gone up 50p as well? So that might cause some questioning. But other than that, I can't see the financial implication being too great if it's not increased. But if you're going to do one, should you not do the other? And are you then opening up a bigger challenge costs by people?
Bearing in mind, do these costs, they compare favourably with other places?
So it's quite difficult to compare table tennis and tennis because the facilities are so different, especially with tennis, where our tennis court is basically tarmac and one court, and it's basically a car park with a tennis net in it. So even though if you compare the prices at Sports Park at lower, Loddon Valley are lower, especially for the adult rates, I don't think it's really, if you're going to play tennis at Woodford Park, you're paying probably because you're walking across the field to play, if that makes sense. If you want to play tennis properly, you're going to go in.
All right, so I think the tennis, that's not having an increase there is not going to make any difference whatsoever. I'm more interested in the table tennis, and I think from what I'm hearing, it's not a massive it compares favourably with other table tennis charges.
It does,
other venues already, even with the increase that you're proposing.
Another question for
Yes,
clarification. A Healthy Habits card.
Yeah.
The under 18s OAP's rates also is offered to concessions. So the other prices are OAP under an 18. Does that also include concessions?
I don't believe so. I think that you can apply for a Healthy Habits card. There's a list of kind of terms on there. I can't remember them off the top of my head. It's quite a long list. I'd have to.
So an adult who qualified as a concession rate then has to pay the full adult rate. Concessions would be, is that people on universal credit?
Or disabled people.
I don't know. Let's clarification would be great.
I think those with additional needs are on there. Not that we have anyone apply with it. We haven't got anybody at the additional needs that's got a Healthy Habits card. It tends to be, if I'm honest, adults in the evening use it to get the cheaper rate for badminton, because then they get a couple of quid off each of them.
Who do we give a concession to, Kevin? I mean, is it people on universal credit, which?
Yeah,
I think that might be on the list as well. It's quite a long list, and I can double check the full. Yeah, we don't tend to get any questions about it, to be honest. I haven't looked into it for a long time, but I can do.
If you could supply that list.
To be honest, what I'm then thinking is we're giving old OAP, does that mean 65 and over?
No, 60, you've got to be parity, haven't you now?
But you don't get your state pension at 60.
Don't get into 67,
I don't know.
68.
I don't exactly what can we mean by that.
Yeah.
But I mean,
You must
it
pass
feels
60.
to me that we've got, there are a lot of pensioners who are actually higher taxpayers, who've got, good income, and we're charging them lower rates than adults are who are on universal credit or whatever. So this doesn't seem quite the right way around to me. That perhaps we should be, our concessions should also be offered the lower rate. But I need to understand what the concession was.
Yeah, the only thing would probably be how we go about booking those, because these rates are used for, so if somebody calls up to book a table, can I play table tennis at a certain time? And we say, yes, no problem at all, book them on the system, they turn up, and the way we decide the price is whether or not they've got a card at the time. So our receptionists will use the time of day to determine whether it's people.
Yes, we've got a Healthy Habit concession card, then you'd know.
Yeah, so
Put them on the.
if they don't have a card, so we wouldn't ever go about asking them.
No, that's fine. I'm not saying that because that would be more difficult. But if they've had to show their evidence of Yeah, to apply for a concession,
Yeah.
and they've got the Healthy Habit concession card, and whenever they show that, they would then get the OAP rate, but I'm also then at the point of thinking, I don't quite understand why a 6-year-old pays the same as a pensioner or concession, you'd almost need 3 rates. I think that's what most.
That's not complicated.
That's what most people
That's
say.
not complicated. Yes, good.
I'm sorry, yeah, that's what I'm here for. So could I oversight scrutiny, ask the awkward questions?
Could I suggest that as a committee, we agree this budget for this year, and we put the question to the officers, that we come up with why we have adults, under 18s, OAPs and concessions, and what fits into that criteria for moving forward. Do we need the concession rate? Do we have, what is an OAP? 60 is not old, as he rapidly approaches it. So perhaps that's a bigger question that we should ask and look at for next year than while we're sorting out this budget.
Let's do that, because I think there are definite questions to be asked there.
It's about, you know,
Yeah.
doing the best for our
Yeah.
community and better access for the people who need it.
But we used to, if it helps, we used to have as well a mixed rate that used to go onto all of these individual items too. So Bamington used to have an adult under 18 and a mixed rate, pass and non-pass for each of those, and there was an off-peak rate. And I think over the last probably 6 or 7 years, we've started to reorganize it slowly to fit in with what makes sense of the centre, which is why now we have pass, adult non-pass, under 18 pass, and under 18 non-pass. So we've trimmed it down already, but it could definitely be relooked at, because there are still some rates that aren't used, for example, in some activities. And when I'm comparing the prices, everyone does everything differently. So at the Places for People sites, they have a daytime rate and an evening rate, and that's it. There's no under 18, there's no adult. It's just depending on what time of day you're playing, back to the cost of the court or the facility.
Yeah, I mean, in their adult membership, you can take 4 children for free along for.
Yes, and that's kind of why it's so difficult to do the comparison sometimes, because everyone's got their own little things they do. But of course, from their prices point of view, it's this price here, that price there, and that's what we do, publicly. Which of course is easier to manage, but then you're not necessarily providing as much of a benefit to people as this committee may want to. So it's definitely something we can look at.
Set a working group to look at this.
You know what, I wasn't going to suggest that. I was going to suggest though that Alison, you work with Ed to informally come up with something and then report back to
I don't think I'm the only person.
You've been co-opted to that. You've been co-opted to that.
Since you're so keen on it, so I think that's what you should do.
I think it's really important. It's like, it is,
Yeah, I want to know.
for the-
So why don't you work with Ed and report back to the committee?
We might, really increase the usage. It's what we want, isn't it? We want it being well used.
Okay,
I
so
don't think I can just set the working group.
I would go along with the working group idea. I think it shouldn't fall on one councillor either. Yeah.
There's no decisions involved, so whatever the committee wants to do.
all right, should we find the working party then to look at that?
Point.
Do we think it's significant enough?
Well, we could invite other members of the council, if anybody else wants to be on it. And 3 is normally a good number.
Who would like to be on the working party?
Yes, I raised it.
Okay.
Agreed.
In about 3 months' time, we've got a new council. So unless you complete the work within that 3 months.
So I think
You could
we'd
well
be
have
looking
people-
at this after the change it, so when the business is moving the.
You may well have people working, but who will not be here for whatever reason. And I'm just.
That's why I propose principle in the minutes to have the committee would agree that
Yeah.
a working.
When's the next leisure services meeting up in this one?
think it's just about in April.
This is before the,
Yeah.
But if we're not going to bring this into next year's budget, then it doesn't actually have to start until May.
Yeah.
And it could be a recommendation from this committee to the next.
to the next
committee.
one. Fine, well, let's do that then, shall we, instead? That makes more sense, doesn't it? If we can.
I don't want that.
that'd be lovely. And in the meantime, can we please have a show of hands to vote for those charges, please? That's-
You have your hand up, Carl.
I'm going to, I was going to say, don't have any old age pension, go ahead.
I'll tell you how old he is in a minute.
Okay, so item 7 then, which is the charges for 23-24. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
We haven't
Look, all
community halls yet.
Yes,
thought we just had charges.
It's all in there now.
Are we
I
not-
just understood to do the
Oh,
legislature.
sorry, I thought. In that case, please carry on.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
this is certainly a little simpler to look at. You can see there it's 10% across the board, across all the rates. There is a variety of rates there, as you can see. Reason for that is to try and keep things at least reasonably in line with inflation. You've got some significant cost increases in energy, particularly at the halls, and staff costs. Everything has gone up. What I would say there is demand remains really strong. We don't get comments about the halls being expensive. I think they're really good value at the rates we've got there. There is some rounding there just to keep them at kind of the nearest 10 pence, just to make it easy for customers and for administration. But that's the rationale for the 10% across the board there.
Any questions?
Why do, is it just brownies and guides that get special rate for coronation?
It's a historic one. They've always had a separate rate, and a particularly low one. That's been the case since before I was here, actually, for those groups. There are rates for charity organisations and others. It's just that special rate was set up some time ago for those organisations. So.
I think what Alison means is scouts.
Oh, I see. They would get the same rate. They don't actually hire it. Sorry, yeah. Worded, yeah.
Rather than it simply being brownies and guides, an organisation that is excluded boys. Unlike scouting, which includes.
Yeah, we can change the word.
And those of any other.
If it was an organisation of a similar type, we would apply the rate.
Do we mean? Uniform
Youth organisation.
I think, you know, if a youth group approach to like doing it,
Yeah, okay.
I don't know what you'd name it, but
You can reword.
Any other?
I think, although I do think that's a fantastically lower rate than anybody else gets it for. But perhaps we should make a positive thing of that and support the town council gives.
I think that was certainly the intention that when a separate rate was set to encourage that. And that's it.
Well, they did at the time of the government.
Possibly.
Brown out.
Any other comments? No? Okay, you've all noted that report. I'd like to recommend that we approve the charges for 2024, but I'd like to also propose that we recommend to the next leisure services meeting that we set up a working party to look at the charges along with Ed and the fee structure. Is everyone happy with that? Can I show of hands, please? Those against? Those abstaining? You're abstaining? Okay. You can report that if we give Rob's friendship. Great, then I will go on to item 8, which is the revised estimate.
Excuse me. Right, so revised budget estimates, again, referring to the budget appendix you have there. Key things to note, total expenditure for leisure services activities is estimated to be around £15,000 lower than the original estimate, with income estimated to be 42,696 higher, and that's largely due to strong performance at the leisure centre and gym membership and business coming back there. So there's a net expenditure figure of 57,705 under the original budget figure. So the recommendation there is to note, and also that members recommend those revised budget estimates for the year.
Councillor Jewell.
Yes, can I ask, under the income, what income the grounds maintenance depot gets? I can understand the expenditure on that line, but I was wondering what the income was.
There's income in respect of Bournemouth open space from early town council, which comes into that.
And I had another, and a question from Alex. I ought to lower my voice at that point. The revised estimate is 23% greater than 21-22. Is all of that inflation or a mix of inflation and increased activity?
In what, sorry, Carol? Oh, okay. Well, if I can say
In general.
that any changes in there will be a combination in the revised estimates on expenditure will be a combination of a lot of his staff costs, which goes fairly consistently. Obviously, costs have gone up for energy and things like that, which you mentioned. In terms of inflation, and that's what we're talking about in terms of the charges and trying to offset that. But does that answer the question?
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. On the Woodford Park leisure expenditure, do you know the page I'm on? Woodford Park Leisure Centre 201
Yeah.
expenditure. The maintenance contracts, code 4048. So what, I don't understand the numbers from 1,500 to 4,050 to 5,500. What's the?
There's actually been a change in the codes there. That's amalgamated an old code that no longer exists. One was maintenance contracts, and what was the other one, Ed, that we amalgamated?
Not sure what I
Can't
think it
remember
might be.
what it's called.
I think it was 4035. Sorry.
Yes, it was. So certificate, yes, that's the offset. So certification at 4035, you can see it's gone down. That's why the other one's gone up. There were some items that were falling into the wrong one, which was making it confusing. So certification costs, which gone down, and it's gone up in maintenance contracts. Because some of the contracts were full certification, so there was a grey area about which one should be.
So is that sort of more like a correction, is it?
It is. So you can see that the one's gone up and one's gone down, but that's why, to do with water testing and things like that for the centre.
Is the disparity the same? Or the discrepancy, not disparity, the discrepancy is the same? Could you, there's.
Well, there's some changes in there as well in terms of costs going up. So it won't be an exact one, but that's why it appears to be a lot more than it was.
That's gonna about code 4014, lighting and heating. I mean, as we all know, cost of lighting and heating is going up and up and up. So I'm very surprised that we use £17,242 worth in 21-22, and we're using less.
You've got heat and gas underneath.
Yeah, that's
Heat and gas underneath.
yeah. So gas has gone up significantly. Electricity we're saving on. We've now moved to LED on a lot of things, and we've got the solar panels offset. So electricity should. And over time, the electricity should appear to come down anyway, because we've got a set rate for 20 years on the unit rate for electricity. So as prices go up, that.
When did you agree that?
We've had that for
19 years.
Just coming up 3 years.
Scorgio.
Yeah, but I think we'd find that deal again.
People do criticise that, taking long-term fixed deals, but in times of when they're going like that, like mad, you think, oh, God.
You can't foresee that, but that was.
No, but that was a great idea, but it doesn't mean you get cost certainty, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unusual deal, and that was through the Reading Community Energy Society. So it's kind of you kind of rent the roof space essentially for the solar panels, and then you get a preferential rate for the whole period of the contract on daytime energy that's generated through it. Because we've got such great roofs facing the right way here in Woodford Park, we've been able to
Does the company rent our roof spaces?
Technically,
And for
that's
that
how it
exchange, for
works.
that exchange,
Yeah.
they've given us this fixed rate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The other change there, which we'll see, we will be doing a bit of work on to show members what the impact of that is over the year. Now that Woodford Park Leisure Centre is all on LED lighting, particularly for the sports hall, which was a massive drain, that should be significant.
It would be good if at the end of the year, we did some sort of analysis to see exactly what reductions have been.
Yeah, we haven't done that.
You need something
Yeah.
like that, I think, because when we first did the solar panels, I know I wasn't very encouraging in that direction, because I felt that there were issues with ownership of roof, repair issues and insurance, which I still believe is the case.
Yeah.
But it'd be good to see what the benefit was, because I couldn't actually see. But so if there's benefit there, I think we should do a little report for the next leisure services if we can.
Yeah.
If you're able to. And the same goes with the LEDs, about the effect of the LEDs. Please, if we're able to do that.
Yeah.
Because also that feeds into our climate and literacy agenda. Councillor.
I'd just like to ask about 4251 vending supply, which seems to have doubled. If you could explain that.
Yeah, so 4251 is directly linked to the income code 1251. And if you see that there, we've basically sold a lot more vending than we planned to. So of course the spend's gone up because as we buy more vending supply, we sell it. So that's been one of the codes that's performed particularly strongly this year. We're just selling more.
Is that because of the increased hire and all the other bits that are going on as well?
Potentially, but I think more people are just out and about now.
Okay.
And we've a lot of our regular hires have come back. Yeah, it's been one of our real positives this year, vending.
Has there been a knock-on effect from the new children's play area and lots of families coming and going into that?
I don't particularly think so, although I wouldn't necessarily be able to monitor that easily, if you know what I mean. We don't often have people come in and say, we've just been over there. I'd imagine that shops are probably just as close and brown bags even closer. So unless they're parking, yeah.
Things signposting, where the toilets you can go buy a drink.
Yeah, we don't quite sell the same level of coffee, I don't think, as brown bag. It's kind of like a instant coffee and a little, but yeah, I mean, most of what we sell are ice creams, with the paddling pool being open across the summer, and sports drinks and water. We sell a lot of sports drinks and water.
Great, thank you.
Councillor John.
Yes, on the last, the last page, youth services 608. We've been talking this evening about increases to keep up with inflation, etc. But in fact, in real terms, we've reduced the youth services budget, going from 26,000 to 27,000. If we're talking about the 10%, then 2,600 should be added on to that estimate, underlined 4264. I'm very concerned, but if we care about youth, then we ought to be putting some funding in to actually provide some services. Instead, we're cutting that service in real terms. I would propose that there is a percentage increase in that estimate for next year to keep in line with inflation.
It's gone up £1,000, hasn't it?
That's all.
And we haven't spent anything this last year on it at all.
Or the year before.
No. So you could make the budget whatever you wish to, but if you're just going to not spend £100,000, you're still not spending anything. So but the fact it's going up £1,000 on the estimate's immaterial. The issue there, a bit like the things with Ed's budget and what we were calling concessions, the money is immaterial in that respect. It's the fact that nothing is being spent. But perhaps that's the question that should be asked, is why nothing's being spent on youth services.
I mean, I can answer that in so much as there was no submissions to the tender for the youth services, which is what that money was put aside for. That has moved on slightly, and that there's a an item on that slightly later, but as it stands at the moment, there is no plan for how that money would be spent in this coming year. But we are working on what that service provision might look like, and obviously having some money in the budget to be able to do that.
Do we think that budget that's been allowed for will be
It's a little bit difficult to say because we don't know exactly what that work would be. That was set and provided a certain specification of service in terms of detached use work, which we were looking at, and for what we went out to tender with, the sum of money was about right, we think, for what we were looking at. That might well be different going forward because we might be looking at a different offer.
So if we looked at a different offer and it came in more expensive, then we'd have to come back to this council and then back to strategy and resources for approval.
Yeah, I mean, whatever we do, we would have to go through that process anyway.
Yeah.
Because we're not looking at what we were looking at previously. So what I would say there is that if that was the case and we were looking at something that was more expensive, it's got to come back to SNR anyway. So if we wanted to add more money to it specifically, that
We could do later.
Yeah, I would argue that we're reducing our youth services budget, and we shouldn't be. We've just been through all of the other ones and put our charges up by 10% to cover inflation, well, not 10%, 10% or less. Yet with youth services, regardless of whether we're going to spend it or not, if we haven't got it, we can't spend it. Because the youth, various working parties, groups haven't met, and therefore it hasn't been spent, haven't met regularly enough, then we don't know. And it may be that when it does finally, I think it's April or something, it says in the agenda, they might need more money to get the youth service that Woodley deserves. And they're going to be shortchanged. Yeah. And I think we really should be saying to the youth in Woodley, we're there for you. We want to provide a service, and you're worth being kept up with inflation rather than being cut.
Yeah, I think the budget is just what it says. It's a budget. This leisure services really wanted to go back to SNR and ask for more money, and they're more than capable of doing that and going back to SNR and asking for more money if that's what's needed. Indeed, but we have an overall budget for this council, and I'm sure it will be managed. But I think the budget that's been allowed for is reasonable, and it's an increase over last year, as has been pointed out already. So I don't have any strong feelings towards that. I think we need to make a change. Yes.
I wholeheartedly agree with what Carol said about supporting the youth of Woodley, etc. But to compare this estimate with the other items we were discussing at 10%, isn't a true comparison, because all of those budgets have had money that has been spent and has got income coming in or going out, and so those figures have increased, whereas we've spent nothing, so we can't increase on nothing. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would actually put a proposal. I don't know if you'd like to. That's on the table.
So the other council.
If there's a seconder for that.
So what's your proposal there?
Is that we increase the amount rather than reduce it in real terms. So 10% would be 2,600. So the new estimate would be 28,600.
Who seconds that motion? Councillor seconds that motion. Okay, thank you, Councillor Donna. Can I have a show of hands, please? Sorry, Keith. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was only going to just reinforce the message, contrary to what Carol said about this is the budget and that's it. Your message and Kevin's message that if the services need extra money, then it will go through the process. And as long as it's justifiable, there will be extra money for it. I think it's naive to say it's 26,000 or 27,000, and that's it. And if we need to have 30,000 or 35,000, it'll never happen. I think that's a very naive view. And if you are going to use the inflation, then the 3,000 for used projects has not been increased for even longer time, and you should therefore apply that. And then you move on to other things. So it is a dangerous slope to constantly say everything has to go up by inflation, because we just can't afford it. But in terms of this particular project, the money will be made available. It'll have to go through and voted on, but it will be made
Well,
available.
I think this Leisure Services Council would be very sympathetic to an increase on the budget that's been proposed. Let's say it's a budget, it's not an actual ceiling, so it is a budget. And then we can refer that to SNR, who also would be sympathetic. So I think, if it came in 30,000 or 35,000, as has been said, I think we would look at that very sympathetically to provide the services and an increase from us. Councillor.
I appreciate all that, but the whole point of budgeting and, what's the point in doing it if you say that you'll just review it at a later date anyway? So why don't we vote to increase it today? And if it needs to be increased some more, it goes to the main meeting as suggested. So, if you're saying that it's a budget and, it has to have a purpose, and if we're supporting that we increase it, increasing it now is not going to put it in any kind of jeopardy to be increased to more once the need.
But not
that
increasing
increase.
it, but not increasing it now is going to have the same effect. So I think what we do is we vote on the proposal that Carol has already made, and then we get on with the rest of the business and the agenda. That's what I'd like to do. So Carol, if you could just give us your proposal again, please.
That the youth services budget isn't cut in real terms, and that we actually put increase the estimate for 23-24. The estimate for 23-24 is increased 10% on the 22-23 estimate, which is 2,600.
And we've got a second to that. That's Councillor Larder. Can I have our voting one, please? All those in favour of that proposal? All those against? Yeah, vote on time.
Would I be
All those-
recorded as voting for that proposal?
Yes, likewise.
Can we so have a recorded vote on
Yeah, can we have a?
How many members voted for that?
Sorry?
Can we call for a recorded vote? How many other members voted for the call? Yeah, I know at the back.
Let's have a look at the
If
standing.
it's silent.
Yeah, I don't think it says there's a number. I think any councillor can ask for a recorded vote at any time, was my understanding. If anyone wants to challenge that, I
I
can
think
find
you
it.
won't. I don't think you have to vote for that. I think you can. It could just be requested as a lot agreed to it. So that's.
Okay. Give me just a second then, please. I have Councillor Jewell voting for, Councillor Asanjari voting for, Councillor Swaddle voting against, and Councillor Smith voting against. We haven't done abstentions.
Abstentions.
That is a drawn vote, which means I believe the chairman wants to casting vote.
No vote twice.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, in that case, I vote against.
Proposal is defeated.
Okay, I'll take the item on the agenda, which is to approve the charges for item 8 to approve the revised estimates for 22-23.
So just as a note, Chair, that
Yeah.
that particular item was for the proposed estimate for 23-24. We haven't actually done the vote on the revised estimate for 22-23.
That's the one, that's what I'm doing now. Number 8, please have shown of hands.
I don't understand.
Item 8 on the agenda is the revised estimate for 22-23, which is the budget we've been just been discussing.
Yes.
So what I want to do now is I want to approve that budget. All those in favour?
Clarify what we're, is it
Number
we're
8,
the
revised estimate.
revised?
Yes, revised estimates for 22-23, item 8 of the agenda. All those in favour? All those against?
Yeah.
All those, yeah, that's fine. And then I'll move on to item 9, which is the budget estimates for 23-24. That's on page 10. Kevin.
Yes, so we've ventured into that a bit there. This is the last column in those supplementary sheets, which the estimates for 22, 23, 24, sorry. what you will see there is that we are looking at a net increase of around 95,000 over the 22-23 revised estimates. In terms of expenditure there, a lot of that is staff cost and superannuation in respect of the pension requirements and the National Pay Award. There are additional costs there in terms of energy, which we mentioned as well. Income, there's a modest income increase budgeted for there, but not a huge one, given a lot of the leisure centre activities, and certainly the halls are pretty much at capacity in terms of what they can take, albeit there's some variance there in terms of the charges that have been agreed.
Okay. I'll ask for questions, please, for next year's financial 23-24 estimated budget. Okay, I don't have a show of hands then, please. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? Thank you very much. And we'll go on to item 10, which is the Local Youth and Partnership meeting. The Community Youth Partnership meeting on the 4th of January was cancelled. And parties currently got opportunities to provide services at different levels, potentially with different partner. Kevin, can you give us an update?
I can, yeah. We did have a very interesting session last week with some members from Early Town Council and the clerk to look at what might be possible in terms of some joined up working. What's come out of that is we've agreed to actually invite some providers to come back and talk to us again, basically to see if we can find an offer that's more attractive for a provider to want to provide, basically. We think there's some potential there. There's definitely overlap in terms of what we're trying to do, but there are some differences as well, which is what actually might make it work. Early have got buildings and something that could potentially work as a hub that might enable detached work in Woodley to actually happen at a cost that makes sense for a provider to do, which is what the problem was, we think, from us not receiving any tenders. It was a big commitment for a provider to engage staff or employ staff to come and do what we wanted. So we're looking at the potential for a joint venture, and we'll be progressing on that basis.
When do we expect to be able to bring that forward services?
It depends what comes out of the conversations that we have. So I'm arranging with the clerk early at the moment for some more informal meetings.
Okay. Can we make sure that's on the agenda for the next?
I'll send, provide an update.
Provide an update for that. I think it's one of those areas which is urgent now.
Yeah.
Councillor.
Thank you. Is there a reason why the proposed meeting is in April and not like as soon as possible? The meeting that was cancelled in January.
That's the Community Youth Partnership. They've all been scheduled through the year for when they would happen.
But because that one was cancelled, could it not have been rescheduled for not necessarily the one in April, but like, end of January or February?
I mean, at this point, the town council is not really inputting anything to that, in so much as we don't have a youth service provision. The other providers within the partnership obviously continuing with their work, but we haven't had anything to contribute until.
Would they be expecting a report from us in terms of what they would like to?
Yeah, and I think when we've got some more information about how that might work and what that might look like,
that's when you would go back
into those partners.
Just remind me, who's the chairman of the Community Youth Partnership?
Greg, I believe.
No, it doesn't have one at the moment. It met and it appointed a chair for the one meeting.
That was what I remember.
Yeah.
So is that why it's without a chairman driving it forward? I can see why.
The terms and conditions dictate that the chairman should be a non-councillor.
Yes.
Just for information.
Councillor George, you have a question?
Yeah, there's the two youth groups, if you like. There's the Community Youth Partnership, which we've just been talking about, but there's also the Youth Working Party. And I feel that they could probably meet more often, especially if that other one has been was cancelled. And if there is talking with Early Town Council, I think if that's information from that or what's happening there doesn't go to
Yeah.
Youth Working Party.
That's the point.
It was the Youth Working Party meeting with them, so it was.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand.
Oh, right, okay, that's
thank you.
great, because my next question was, what's the terms of
Yeah.
the working party, but it's
Yeah.
already included in that discussion, that's fine then. All right then, I mean, I think it's urgent that we move that along as soon as possible, so on the community youth partnership, do they meet quarterly? Is that the cadence for them?
I'm not sure how many
Matthew?
it was a year or.
Find out, I'm pretty sure they were 4 times a year. Let me have a. But the yeah, at least quarterly.
At least quarterly, okay, so that's good, because we've got some wiggle room there. So could we schedule another meeting for February of the Youth Community Partnership? That's what I'd like to propose.
Mr. Chair, I think it's the Working Party that's the most
Is it?
important one, because the Community Youth Partnership depends on,
The working party's input.
yes, because
Okay.
we've got nothing to input.
Yeah, so so the Youth Working Party doesn't have a meeting scheduled at the moment, except it is involved in these informal discussions at the moment. I think once we've got some information for that, we can come back and actually meet. So
Okay, but I want to put the meat under pressure by organising the youth community working party meeting in February. So there's a deadline for us to get information back.
Okay, for the Youth Working.
Yes,
Party,
please, yes.
The Youth Working Party.
Hey, Gilbert.
Okay, yeah.
Unfortunately, he's not able to be here tonight.
Do that, that will be good, because I think if we don't schedule anything, then it goes on, we lose another month, and then nothing happens. And I think if we've got the target of having the working party meeting in February, then that will be the influence of making sure that we have some further talks with Lowry Town Council about this joint venture, and then of course it could be scoped out.
So will the Youth Working Party be reporting to full council in February?
It reports to Strategy and Resources
When's that next week?
next week, so it won't have
Next
met
week,
by
won't
then.
have
So
met.
they won't be.
What you've just told us there.
It's so important that, is it possible to put it on the agenda at full council? For us to know where we're at, what's happening?
I mean, I can provide an update. There will be an update at Strategy and Resources, so that would filter
We-
through. That
we
does
will
go into
receive
full
that.
council, but yeah.
Any other questions on that? Thank you for your input, appreciate that. I'll move on to item 11 then, which is the Long Mead open space update. Kevin.
I'm afraid I don't have an update.
Down date.
So I went down there over Christmas to admire the work, fantastic. And I noticed a large cardboard box full of spray cans, etc. So they've been kept in dumping their rubbish in a collected place. But that wasn't the borough side of things.
Yeah, they do come and
But if
collect.
we could push the borough to have a proper bin down there, then, because I know at a previous meeting, there was an issue raised about, spray cans just being left around or whatever. So I was quite pleased to notice that, they made their own bin.
Takes that bin away then, is it the borough? or
Yeah,
do we do that?
no, Woking.
Oh,
I
Woking,
mean, if
Woking.
there's stuff on our side or our guys are down there.
Ours is the grassy side and
Oh, it's
The borough
depending what
seems to-
side you are.
convicts and lawn bits.
Okay. I'll go on to item 12 then, which is the seating locations for proposed new seats, which has been filed by Councillor Heap, who unfortunately isn't here to receive the thanks and honour for having started and put this together. Councillor George, do you have anything to say?
No, he didn't mention it. All I wanted, we talked about the budgets. I couldn't find it anywhere in the budget figures, so I meant to ask them. I believe there's a budget for 4 seats. Is that correct? Or that's what Alex is assuming?
So yeah, it's in the capital programme, there's an allocation specifically for seats. Yeah.
So I think it's, I mean, I ticked a few that I thought were a good idea to put a seat there or whatever. But I wonder whether it ought to be something we put on the website, this list and asking people for their comments, if there's any that they'd like to vote for or whatever. And get on with it.
I think that's a really great idea, and then people can choose their like top 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
Great idea. Yeah. Councillor Bacon.
Yeah, what's missing from here is potential bus stops, seats, covers. I know, for instance, I've been asking both the borough and the town for a bus stop canopy thing in Tippings Lane. And hard standings, they're all ready to do it. And to be perfectly honest, it would be easier for us to put on put those sorts of canopy stroke seats. Because the hard standings are designed for it. A lot of these, when you actually, it's a great idea. When you start looking at the practicality, where are you going to put them? Who owns the land? Are you going to get permission? Who have to maintain them? How, you know, there's a lot of questions where probably a lot of these will just disappear because you just can't practically do it. And my own concern, but it's up to this committee to decide, if you then open it up, you're going to get a whole load of requests and suggestions, a lot of which you will not be able to do, and all you end up with is upsetting the residents, because when residents make suggestions, rightly or wrongly, they often believe that it should happen, and rejection is not the easiest thing for any of us to take. So just bear that in mind.
Chairman, I think we need to know whose land all these sites are on. If it's town council land.
Well, that's part of the feasibility project that the town clerk is putting together. So that at the moment, this is just a recommendation for possible locations. Those aspects are still not be determined.
Yeah, we would need to work through.
You will have to work through it, yes. Yes.
Dan, I was just going to say what Keith's just saying there. Well, and Carol said we've got possibly have funding for 4. If you took Keith's comments, Weeble Open Space, Loddon Mead and Chapel Hall are owned by the town council anyway. So that's 3 of the 4 possible locations. But also if you're going to put these benches in and the infrastructure, there's going to be things such as utilities that would have to be checked as well. So it's not just the case of putting a £600 bench down on a £1,000 slab. You've then got to get all the utility companies to check that where you're digging your slab, you're not going to go through your.
No, you don't have to have a digging permit for that.
Digging permit.
You have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be part of the piece.
So it is quite. Should we sort of defer this to the next meeting for when Alex could be here?
It's probably not a bad idea, because even though I wouldn't mind putting out for a bit of participation, I think until we know which ones are the most feasible.
Because Alex
What
would
you say,
would really go. He'd really sell this and give us a lot more detail, I think.
Could we not use our comms, Woodley Town Council social media is great, just to put out a completely open question, inviting all our residents to put forward anywhere they think would be a good place to bench, which might add to Alex's list. And Alex, you know, all credit to him, done great research on this. And I think some of the things we put forward, Alex might very well be able to look at and say, I thought of that, and then I realised that this means it doesn't work. But just to put out an open question, this, you know, we're starting some work, you know, looking at benches in.
So we're putting out benches.
Yeah.
Where and
We're launching a project, you know, looking at this, we'd love your help. Where do you think there should be?
We do that, Kevin?
If that's what members would like to do.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. Let's make any commitment on our side, but we still need to do some more feasibility before we make decisions, I think. But this is a good start. I like it.
Yes.
Could you include the bus stops?
The bus stops. Why don't you do bus stops?
Well, because Keith now got a pass for buses, so.
It's like it's talking about all our students from Wales were standing in the rain and getting sick.
That's doing it.
Yeah,
Does include canopies for some bus stops. Okay, what else on the agenda? Item 13, future agenda items. Does anybody have any future agenda items at the moment? Those.
I presume the use
Yes.
discussion will be.
It will be continued. I'll
Yes.
make sure that's on the next agenda. If it's not, I shall make sure it's on there, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, number 14, publicity and website. We've already talked about for these subjects, inviting some public comment seating. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to put on the website? Okay. No, you're okay. Okay, in that case, I would like to close the meeting and start at 9:30. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming out and taking the time. Much appreciated.